you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit, and now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Hey, welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Watching on YouTube, very much appreciate it. Give us a like, give us the thumbs up, hit that notification bell if you're a subscriber. That'll let you know when we're going to go live, and of course, subscribe. But we would very much like everybody to move over to Rumble, sign up over there, give us one of those little rumbles, and of course, when you're there and you're looking right there where my finger's pointing, join the locals community, peoplespundit.locals.com. Sign up, get exclusive content, embargoed polling, early access to our polling, other polling, and of course, you'll help us design the surveys and learn a lot more about them. But more importantly, you will help us bring you dynamite election coverage in November. It's coming up quick. We have primaries coming. Texas is already underway, basically. We also probably won't get to Texas in the People's Pundit style, but the rest of them we would like to do so. But we need the community to bring that to you. So sign up, peoplespundit.locals.com. Today is a President's Day special. President's Day special. All right, we're going to look at some polling real quick, which locals you already saw, but we're going to go over it because I think it's important to do this in the context of Black History Month. Since every President's Day, we have the left-wing smears that we have against Washington and Jefferson and everyone who was a founding father. And of course, Abraham Lincoln is glorified to the point of, deity status almost, when in fact, the bottom line is history has been quite twisted into something that it is not. All right. So we're going to do that. And it's not going to be popular with some people. But that's just tough beans because the truth is the truth. I'm actually going to play a video clip too. And we're going to have it by the numbers. We're going to do a bunch of little factoids, right? Because this is Inside the Numbers. Mm-hmm. So we're going to take President's Day, with a couple of cute little factoids here and there. But we're really going to iron out here the lies. Yes. Okay? Because they are lies. History has been written and rewritten. And unfortunately, look at what's going on today in Canada and in our own country. And it's this lack of understanding about true history that has left us, as the case has been with many civilizations and nations before us. It has left us vulnerable and susceptible to the tyranny of that group of people who have been around forever and will never go away. They may have been pharaohs once upon a time, kings once upon a time, collective monarchists once upon a time. The artificial aristocracy, as Jefferson called them. The artificial aristocracy that smacks and reeks of elitism happen to be pretty much the dumbest among us. But unfortunately, they're motivated. So, unless we know how to spot it when we see it, we really have no hope of thwarting it the way that others who came before us could not thwart it. All right. Now, that is not a defeatist attitude. That is simply, this is what it will take to stop this march of tyranny, which is absolutely on the march. So we can't celebrate President's Day with our heads in the sand. Mm-hmm. Our founding fathers would be horrified. Mm-hmm. Horrified.
Preach it.
There's anything called CIA. There's anything called a Federal Bureau of Investigation. That there is, right, an FDA for that matter. It is not at all what have they lost their mission? According to the latest Project Veritas video, they don't even have a mission other than to serve the drug companies. All right, but before we get into that, let's look at some polling. Locals, bear with me. I know you've seen this, but it's funny they did this, and I swear we didn't talk. They just showed it to me this morning. It is absolutely 100% along the narrative of what we're going to talk about today. Here is the latest polling from Rasmussen Reports, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. And I'll have to get rid of myself in order to show you that last one. All right. George Washington's birthday, which is, of course, what we're doing here today on President's Day, is celebrated as a federal holiday known as President's Day on the third Monday in February. There is no federal holiday for Abraham Lincoln's birthday, but many states celebrate the birthdays of both presidents on President's Day. Should there be a separate federal holiday for Abraham Lincoln's birthday? By a 48 to 36 margin, Americans say no. So it's plurality, but nevertheless, it's a 12-point margin for no, with 16% greater than the margin saying unsure. So we collectively wrap them all up into this day known as President's Day. Mm-hmm. Frankly, I think there are a lot of presidents, one in particular, who get no credit during great periods, or I should say, during times of great tumult. Mm-hmm. And when these decisions that the direction the country was going to go in were so critical. And these men who came before us raised themselves up. They made the moment because they rose to the occasion of the moment. Something we seem absolutely incapable of doing in this country today, which is part of the American character that really we have to acknowledge in order to save it, is in deep trouble. We have become a society of I can't. When the most beautiful thing about America has always been that we were an I can nation.
Mm-hmm. That part.
Do you have a very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, or very unfavorable opinion of George Washington? 56% said a very favorable opinion. If you happen to look at parties there, you will notice that Democrats and other are 52% and 50% respectively on very favorable. Republicans had the highest favorability image for George Washington. Somewhat favorable, 21, 26, 29, if we look at RDO. All right. Very unfavorable is almost, it's statistically insignificant. However, you might note that well, we're going to get there. We're going to get there because I don't want to jump shark. Mm-hmm. Or not jump the gun. I don't want to jump the gun. You may notice that somewhat favorable is 15% among, somewhat unfavorable is 15% among white voters, 13% among black voters, 12% among others. However, there is a 2% very unfavorable among black voters. Still, though, overall, statistically insignificant. The age deal here, I noticed a lot of people are concerned about, and we'll talk about that once I get through Lincoln as well. All right, but there certainly is a progression of more popular among older Americans, and the trend descends. All right. Do you have a very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, or very unfavorable opinion of Abraham Lincoln? Jesus. Okay? Jesus. Please remind people, Jesus, that I am on the show. All right. Anyway, moving to Abraham Lincoln. Just right now, throw yourself down because somebody picked this right out on Locals and they're 100% correct. Just go right and look at the category for black others, the demographic for black voters, the demographic that you see Rasmussen has here. 8% somewhat unfavorable. 5%. I thought I just killed it and it still did not go off. This thing is. I need a new phone, ladies and gentlemen. I've had this phone for years. All right, it just doesn't. It's that thing's broken. 8%. And 5, of course, equals 13. I'm turning this off. It keeps clicking up. It keeps going. When you push that back down, it clicks it back up. I got you. All right. Immediately, someone on Locals was like, wow, am I seeing this correctly? Black voters have or black Americans, but this is likely voters, of course, have the highest unfavorability rating for Abraham Lincoln. About even 13 and 15% when it comes to Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. It's pretty much statistically insignificant. But nevertheless, it's there, considering he is the president who presided over emancipation, issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and got the amendment passed it was a little bit shocking to people. I think in the end, like I said, some of this has to do with education. Or some of it may, if this was my own polling, I would like to look at education nested with race, because I would like to see the higher the educated, is that where the unfavorable is coming from? Or is it the high school or less, some associates, maybe some college associate's degree? Where is this coming from? Because I really think some college associate and down is probably going to look at both of these gentlemen a little bit more favorable than those who have gone through the incredibly liberal academic system that is really pumping out anti-Americanism on the daily. I don't know that to be sure, but that's my suspicion. And in fact, I'll go to Mike and ask him. Just ask him. Can I see the data set? And maybe they'll give it to me, and I can cross it and see if that's the case, or they can do it for me, which would be great. I don't have to do it myself.
Nice.
It's a busy week. All right. But I strongly suspect that's where that's coming from. And you will notice that generally speaking, Democrats are not as gung-ho about these figures as Republicans are. I mean, political figures, not number figures. Where the very favorable opinion of these men is a lot less for Democrats. I mean, especially when it comes to Washington. Lincoln is a little different. Lincoln is more, the disparity is not as big with Lincoln as it is with Washington, which I think is rather funny. One of the videos I'm going to play you today, if you've watched this show, why does this matter in the context of Black History Month? Because this constantly is viewed in the wrong context when we talk about these issues. The left wants you to think that basically there was a civil war and then we moved right into the era of Jim Crow. That is not what happened. There was a prolonged period of what you could essentially call almost integration. Black Americans were being elected to public office even in the South. There was a very significant chain of events that transpired that led to Jim Crow. Why don't they want to talk about it? Because it was the Democratic Party. And people will always, there was this change and, this ethereal change that happened and where Democrats became the Civil Rights Party and Republicans were the bullcrap. It's 100 years, including their very progressive presidents, everyone from Woodrow Wilson to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who promised integration and delivered more segregation. Even so-called educated presidents from the North, like a Woodrow Wilson. By the way, I always had this professor, and he always said, never trust a president with a PhD. Woodrow Wilson is one of the worst presidents in the history of the country. One of the worst presidents, but he also happened to be one of the most racist, because there was a view that continues till this very day among so-called progressives, white Anglo progressives, Democrats. Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat who believed that the Anglo-American relationship should basically dominate the world. Even, it wasn't just Black people. It wasn't just Hispanic people. If you were a Southern European, they looked upon you as a dirty European. If you were Italian, if you were Greek, if you were Armenian, if you were German, if you were anything that wasn't white, European, Caucasian, you were inferior. And I'm going to make everybody understand that in the next hour.
Well, that's where mobs began.
That's
of
what
the lack of job opportunities.
Exactly. Like you look at the modern mafia,
Irish.
they look down on even the Irish, because Irish, you know why? Catholicism. It was Catholicism. There were Irish Protestants who were just accepted, no problem. And then there were like Italians, Catholic Irishmen who came here and were essentially treated as an underclass, good for nothing but labor, and for Tammany to get votes for. I mean, that was it. That was it. And then that's why there was a mob. They didn't come here
I know,
becoming
that's what I'm
criminals.
saying. They came here for
They came
freedom.
here for opportunity. And they created La Cosa Nostra to survive.
It's all about survival.
That's it. I mean, you can empathize with that or not, but that is exactly what happened. They didn't do it because they're sociopaths like you, the FBI, and all these other idiots who prosecuted these men. They're not raving, stark mad lunatics who execute their friends. No, they based it upon the Roman legionnaires. The whole hierarchy was structured like the legionnaires. They were thinking people. They were not irrational idiots. And by the way, both of the great German leaders, if you want to call them that, because they did help Germany get out from the thumb of all the other countries, knew this to be the case. Even Otto von Bismarck understood that the rest of Europe looked at Germans like they were dirty. So this isn't just about black Americans. This went, yes, this was about Southern, even to some extent, Eastern Orthodox religions. Yeah. Right or wrong, that's the way it was. And Woodrow Wilson was absolutely a racist. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is viewed as the hero of the Depression. That is not the real history. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, who my grandparents sobbed for when he died because they loved him. Everybody loved him. Deep in the Depression, he lost one of the worst first-term incumbent midterm elections in the history of first-term shellackings. Nobody wanted the New Deal, ladies and gentlemen. It was not popular. Old age insurance, as we now call Social Security, is the remaining relic of the Great Deal. They passed a lot more. And for the first time in history, they actually were very successful in rolling back big government expansion. Which is why he then tried to move to pack the court, like a typical monarchist does. All right. So I can remove this now because we generally have the basic demographics down. And people were starting to make the comparison with Washington and Lincoln on locals. And it's a right comparison to have. Let's back up now. It's President's Day. Let's get back. Washington was indeed a Federalist, although he hated parties. He warned, of course, about partisan politics in his final inaugural address, just as he, by the way, speaking of Ukraine and everything that's going on, just as he warned about foreign entanglements. Do not let the old world drag the new world down. We left there. We built our own country to do something different. These people are like crabs in the pot. They see one getting out and they hook on you and drag you back in, because if they're going down, by God, everybody else is going down with them. So thank you very much, France, for your assistance during the revolution. We'll hit you back, send us a bill, but it doesn't mean we're going to war for you every time you have a problem. My, how far have we fallen? By the way, all of those progressives that we just talked about, who also happen to be racists, also happen to be the ones who got us into both great wars in the 20th century, when the American population did not want to. How did they do it? With lies. The Lusitania was a lie. Woodrow Wilson intentionally sent that ship to be sunk by the Germans. He killed those people, not the Germans, who repeatedly warned him. By the way, Michael Hunt, Crisis in Foreign Policy, like I told you last week, read the damn cables yourself. He was well aware the Germans had been pleading. You would say you're being neutral, but you continuously send these merchant vessels to resupply the British line. If you continue, and they waited, folks, they let a lot of ships go through until they had no choice to finally issue the final ultimatum. If you send another ship, we have to sink it. You're leaving us no choice. Woodrow Wilson intentionally sent that ship to be sunk so the American people could have something to rally behind. It was a lie.
But I'm saying,
because Americans were
angry.
They were angry. They were completely against entering on anyone's side, but completely against helping the British or anyone on the Allied side in World War I. They wanted nothing to do with it.
America first.
So he gave them a crisis to be angry over. Sound familiar? It happens a lot. Continuously happens today. Look at the poor babies being thrown out of the incubator. Look at the poor babies. Right? Look, don't you see it? Like another old professor. You can't see it? When everybody's, what the hell are you talking? You don't see these WMDs? Total lie. No, Ari, it wasn't a mistaken intelligence. It was a freaking lie, Ari. Your boss lied. And that's it. So stop trying to save his reputation. He's a filthy liar and people died over it. But it's not new, is my point. So going back to Washington here, it's a little bit funny because the typical stuff on Twitter, it's predictable every year. George Washington, I don't know that this is even, first of all, I'm a Jefferson guy. When it comes to the founders and the presidents, I'm a Jefferson guy. Jefferson seemed to be way ahead of his time. He was a thinker, but not an elitist. Okay? He had the intelligence that surpassed people who thought they were better than him. And he understood the nature of government, I think, better than anybody else. Like, they all understood the nature of government. Don't get me wrong. But John Adams, fantastic if you read him.
But Jefferson had a depth.
He had like an instinct for it. He had an instinct that the others didn't have. The others would say, well, maybe we could do this better. And Jefferson would say, no, we can't. Avoid it altogether. This is the nature of man, and by extension, this is the nature of government. So therefore, we should only be designing something that coddles and basically promotes the best of us while we, and incentivizes you to be the best that you can be, the good, the best nation, the most honest nation you could be, and definitely try to have a system that dissuades those less admirable qualities in man. He had no delusions. And he was a man, he was a common man, even though he was brilliant. He understood the layman.
Well, he also understood the inherent attributes as mankind that we have.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But,
good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
both
what
ends of the
right,
spectrum.
right. Both ends of the spectrum. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, Washington hated both parties, but unlike Jefferson, he did favor a stronger national government, which is why him and Jefferson butted heads when Jefferson was the Secretary of State, his administration, because Jefferson did not believe. First of all, he thought Hamilton was a tyrant, and he was absolutely right. Even Washington knew that Hamilton was dangerous. He did. The idea, the concept that we shouldn't have a freestanding, a standing army, and that it should all be under civilian control when we do have forces.
Somebody mentioned
Jefferson, he was constantly fighting with Hamilton over that. Hamilton always wanted to raise a permanent army, and Jefferson, what the hell? Right, and the bank issue. Jefferson, what the hell did we do? What the hell did we do if you're going to do that? Why? What was the purpose of the American Revolution? By the way, the military-industrial complex would terrify them. The concept of a permanent bureaucracy for the military alone would terrify them. We would earn their wrath if we could hear it today.
Oh, they are all rolling
Even
their
people
graves.
like Washington who believed right now we need a stronger federal government because the republic is early and it won't survive. If we have all of these states fighting for dominance, fighting for their own self-interests, refusing to pay debts that we owe, because Washington did not want debt from another nation, because then they would be able to call on us when they needed military assistance. So he wanted the federal government to have some kind of mechanism to force those debts to be paid so he can then free us of foreign entanglements. And also, too, I admire the man because for the simple fact that he didn't want to be president.
Nope.
And he sure as hell didn't want to be president for a second term. And there's no law up until FDR, no law on the books that a president can only serve 2 terms. Everybody did it simply in admiration of Washington and for his memory. Respect.
That's when men
Simple.
had
Respect a man like that, honor him by emulating him. There was no codified law that said a president shall only serve 2 terms. And the term president, speaking of president, it's presidency. The term president was modest. John Adams wanted something like His Excellency, the whatever, or, they wanted all. And Washington was like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Get the king out of your brain, bro. Get the king out of your brain. Let go of the Yeah, because they still looked at themselves as British men, and they wanted to be, they thought there was something superior things about the British society. And you have to remember that what they did by taking the side of John Locke instead of Hobbes, what they did was essentially say, we no longer have a father-son type of relationship with the state. Now we are in charge. The voter, the citizen, we are in charge. There is no father here. That was radical.
Yes, that was beautiful.
Incredibly radical for its time. Most people didn't believe that society could even survive or sustain without that system of government. No, and people read John Locke and were like, well, that's, brilliant Scottishman. What can I tell you? But that's idealistic and crazy. The founders were absolutely radical to take his side and try to build a republic around that, looking at the mistakes of prior civilizations. There are certain elements of democracy that are admirable. The idea of representation is admirable, but look at what happened to Periclean democracy. Pericles, by the way, became this august figure, and it's almost like it wouldn't have survived without him. The minute he was gone, it cannibalized itself, like John Adams said. Democracy cannibalizes itself, and it does. The Roman Republic had some incredibly endearing attributes, but how'd that work out? So we need to strike a balance here. We need to listen to our Cicero. Mm-hmm. What did Marcus Tullius say? What was he doing to warn them? What warnings did he give them that came true? And how could they have been prevented? Because by the time Cicero was being the only canary in the coal mine, it was too damn late. The Republic was going, and the emperor was going to take absolute control, or an emperor. And it fell. So they tried to come up with a blend of these systems and take all these attributes from each one.
It was quite beautiful.
It was beautiful, and it was radical.
Mm-hmm.
This concept, though, that all of these men, they're not deities either, and they had flaws. But the stuff I see on Twitter does 2 things. One, it twists the hell out of it. Mm-hmm. Washington was not a slave owner who went out there and whipped the slaves like himself. This is crazy.
Actually, he taught.
This is absolutely, well, wait. This is nuts. Yes. Jefferson was beloved by the people who lived on his plantation. Beloved. Washington provided for emancipation under Virginia law, which made it extremely expensive to do so after Martha's death. Guess what happened? They chose to stay. They didn't want to leave. It was their home. And under Virginia law, it costs a fortune. Let's just say. So everyone thinks you would do better, right? You would be a better person. You have to put yourself in the proper historical context. Then look at their actions. You emancipate one person was expensive enough. Emancipate a plantation of slaves could bankrupt you. Why? Providing for education. They had to have a trade. It wasn't just, okay. And guess what? There was no student loan debt to run up back then. You couldn't get a Pell Grant for your slaves. You paid for it out of your own damn pocket. And Washington did welcome African Americans into his ranks. The faceless one, the crossing of the Delaware. We all hear about that. Nobody talks about. It's true. It was true that it was more beneficial to fight on the side of the British, but the British reneged on their promises too. That's why it's important to keep historical context. Jefferson, by the time he was midlife, he was terrified that the so-called atheist, by the way, they call, he's a deist. He was a deist, not an atheist. And by the way, all of them, by the time they were in their later stages of life, really couldn't even call themselves deists anymore, because the American Revolution was the proof that the hand of Providence did interfere with the events of men. That is all that separated them. They believed in a creator. By the way, you can't be a Freemason unless you do. So immediately this idea that, and they were all Masons. Most of them were all made. The ones we talk about were.
Yeah.
You cannot believe, you can't become, and you will not join Masonic Brotherhood unless you believe in an architect, a creator. You may call him Allah. You may call him Jehovah. You may call him whatever you want to call him. But you must believe there's a creator. Because you have to humble yourself before something that's greater than you, who designed all of this. And the only thing that kept them from being what we know now as traditional Protestants, and by the way, many of them were traditional Protestants. Adam Smith came from the Congregational Church, which was the Pilgrims. It was just later generations. That's what dominated Massachusetts, including public schooling, by the way. The only thing that separated these men was their belief that God interfered with the events of men. They did not believe that in the beginning. Yeah. Later in life, you read their letters back and forth to each other, and the best are John Adams and Jefferson, what we have left. Yeah. And they will make it 100% clear that they threw off those Unitarian views years ago. They absolutely looked, Washington's quote is obviously the most direct to it, but they obviously looked at the American Revolution itself as the number one instance in human history to prove that God does indeed listen, and He will help if you are honest, if you're humbled, if you're if you're legit, if your call for Him is legit, and it's a collective call. And by the way, they did start this thing to be a nation to show God how mankind can truly live according to Him. Yep. Virtuously, which is the word that virtue is the word that they used all the time.
All the time.
All the time. So how do we get from Washington to Lincoln then, right? Because there's a lot in between. And looking at that poll, it's kind of funny because modern discourse trashes Washington for being a slave owner while it heralds Lincoln as the great emancipator. Lincoln imprisoned his critics. Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Lincoln was a freaking tyrant. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, he was.
Let me spit some truth at you. Lincoln was a tyrant who believed that the Constitution could essentially be suspended to preserve the nation, to preserve the Union. And he didn't mean Union by North and South. He meant the Union that was the United States. And Lincoln wasn't some great emancipator who couldn't wait to free the slaves. That was a political move. A savvy one, but a political one. Lincoln, in truth, wasn't convinced that once given freedom, that African Americans would even know what to do with it. The real Abraham Lincoln isn't an abolitionist. No. Now, he comes from a line, he did, but he had no zeal for it as a younger man. He had a zeal for the law, and he liked politics. But he only chose to fight for the passage of that amendment when he needed a political win, and when he needed to distract his Southern critics and other critics from the politics of negotiating a peace between the North and the South. It also didn't help. It also didn't hurt, to try to flood the ranks of the Union Army with other regiments from, that were populated by newly freed slaves. One of my favorite movies ever, by the way, in case you guys are wondering, is Glory of the 54th Massachusetts. You want to talk about heroism and bravery and a story of men, trying to fight for something. With all odds.
And knowing the odds are against them.
Yeah, I mean, the assault on Wagner is one of the bravest things for any man or to any group of men to wear a uniform to do. I mean, it's incredible. And sometimes these moments make the men. Like Ferris Bueller's character wasn't a great soldier. he had a hard time. He'd write home to his mom a lot. I don't know if this is for me. He liked it at first, but then he got a lot, he had problems with like regular army, like discipline. And he really didn't understand the politics of it because his idea of, he also belonged to a certain Christian church that a lot of people thought was fringe, but they were abolitionists, which, by the way, is where real civil rights came from in this country, the fight for civil rights, both women's suffrage and for African Americans. It did not come from the Democratic Party. It came from churches. If it wasn't for the Protestant church in this country, or it's not one church, but the Holy Warriors, as they were called, there wouldn't have been any of this. It wouldn't be women's suffrage. Where did, and I'll read that in some of the second half of the show. Even all the way up to Martin Luther King, who we just celebrated short time ago. These people were not organized by political parties and factions. They were organized by the Holy Warriors, those who believed in the true law, the higher law. Which is that, yeah, sure, men can come together and write down a bunch of words on paper, but we have another law to obey. And in that law, all men and women are equal because we're all God's creatures. That's where it came from, folks. There's no other way to get around it.
And it was put in there purposely. Purpose.
I missed that. Thank you for bringing that up. Because as if Jefferson, and by the way, the proofreaders were Benjamin Franklin and John Adams, while they were writing the Declaration of Independence, as if Jefferson didn't know what he was doing when he threw that phrase in there. And it was actually amended twice. Adams and Jefferson both kind of believed, but definitely Franklin and Adams, both believed Jefferson was a radical. And he was like, I want it all in there. Mr. Slave Owner. He wanted to end it with the stroke of a pen. And Franklin said, this Congress is being held together by the skin of our teeth. And you do that, we're going to lose South Carolina. We lose South Carolina, Virginia's going to go. We lose Virginia, and the whole thing's over. So we need to craft this in a way where everyone can kind of sign on, but understand later we're going to have to deal with this. Even when it came to the ratification of the Constitution, debating of it, they knew they were ending slavery.
Yes. That wording was very particular.
Absolutely. I mean, it essentially outlawed slavery by 1830, new slaves. Right? 1830. I think somebody can correct me on that. But, I mean, the language made it very clear. It's over. It's not going to continue forever. But they wanted to just get over this hump. Adams fielding letters from Abigail all the time. While you're over here self-proclaiming everyone's equal, how about women? And he'd say, Abigail, chill out.
Yeah, she was like,
we're going to destroy the fabric of society if we move this thing along too quickly. And then everyone's going to be waiting in line for their own proclamation. Just chill out here. We need to survive the revolution, okay? We need to make sure this is a working government after we win.
It was passed by Congress in 1865.
No. That's no. The initial version of the Constitution. You're talking about the ratification.
Yeah, the ratification.
Yeah,
sorry.
the 13th. I'm talking about when they adopted the Constitution. The language itself outlawed it. Outlawed new slavery trade. So it was over, and they knew it was over. They did that on purpose. You think that was a freaking accident? Is my point. And it took time for things. Like, they understood that the wheels of change sometimes don't move as fast as we would like. And that's just reality, ladies and gentlemen. The republic would not have survived. It wouldn't even be a republic if we would have tackled these issues first. You have to look at this stuff in historical context. It's unfair to the figures in history if you don't. It's unfair to them. Everyone has certain constraints in all different periods of history. All right, so thank you for making me come back to that, though.
Because that's
I
very
couldn't.
pertinent.
Yes,
about...
they knew exactly what they were doing, and by the time Jefferson was older, he actually didn't think it was enough. He started to think, I wish we would have done enough, and he actually feared that God would punish them for not doing enough. He felt that one day God was going to put the smackdown on us for the sin of slavery. Doesn't sound like a deist, does it? By the way. We're all deists when we're younger. Or close, right? or nobody wants to lean on the Lord when you're young.
Because you feel young.
Even
vital,
today's day now, right? Less wise.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes on, however, boy, we start to develop that relationship real quick, don't we?
And then had kids.
But they saw, yeah, they saw the revolution as proof. They really did believe that. Mm-hmm. And it's incredible if you read their actual words, It's incredible how you can see that transformation over time. Because it is true that many of them didn't, believe the Trinity, stuff like that. They didn't believe in miracles. That's a great way to put it. So actually, Jefferson had a very difficult time believing in some of the stories of Jesus Christ because he intellectually did not believe in divine miracles on earth. But actually, over time, that view changed because many of them, it was such an impossible feat, not just the war. The coming together was such an impossible feat. It could only have been the hand of providence. It could only have been the politics of it. How all of these men with all of these different interests could come eventually to agreement, because it wasn't an agreement. We act like, when we look at our modern Congress now debating, they never come together. They never find those single root of principles. Right, because here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Now we live with what Washington warned us with, which is two different parties who don't agree on the fundamentals at all. And of course, look, I spend day after day hammering Republicans. But at the very least, they still pretend to believe in the American principles that founded this country. Well, the Democratic Party doesn't. That's just a fact. They don't believe in inalienable rights anymore. They don't. The majority of the party doesn't. They don't even profess a belief in a creator. So how could you believe in inalienable rights if you don't believe in a creator? Are there those exemptions to the rule, like Thomas Paine? Sure, but I deal with stats all day. I generalize. Generally speaking, Washington was right. Religion and morality are indispensable supports to this type of government. Otherwise, it's very easy to start believing that government is the one who gives you those rights. That some benevolent government, which is nonsense. Total nonsense.
The other problem is Jefferson and Adams had a very good relationship, but they vehemently argued 24/7.
They had a good relationship in the beginning. Then it got rocky during the presidential elections.
But they still spoke.
And there was a period of time where they didn't know. When Adams was done and went home, they didn't, because Adams found out he was behind the hermaphrodite smears. Jefferson. I kid you not.
Some things are funny.
They were each funding, but they both were doing this to each other. But Jefferson had this ad. It was like an ad. It's horrible. You could probably look it up and still see it. I'm sure you can. You can. Not you can probably. You can. But, picture and everything of John Adams as a hermaphroditic figure. And, he was never viewed to be the manly man. That's for sure. I mean, he was short, bald, pudgy. He was a thinker. He believed, he loved the law. He loved British common law, the system itself. He wasn't a man who was like, they had very, very different things, very different ways of looking at the revolution and the war. So they made very different presidents. And it makes sense that somebody like John Adams would do the Alien and the Sedition, by the way, two acts, because he's the kind of person who would look at the law first, whereas Jefferson is the kind of person who would look at the nature of man and government and everything first. So Jefferson would say, could never justify.
So different and polarized in their views, but when they came together, they made beautiful discoveries by writing, like their letters to each other.
In their later stages of life, those letters to each other are some of the most. You could just tell there's two brilliant men talking to each other, and you're getting to peek in on their. Yeah, it's amazing.
But that's not.
And by the way,
anymore,
if you don't know it, you should look up the story of their death. Their deaths, which is an incredible. I'm not going to give it away. It's an incredible story. Okay. All right, I got 50. You're getting goosebumps because I mean it's incredible. I mean, what are the odds? Speaking of the show, what are the odds? First Monday every month, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, but what are the odds with Barnes and Barris? What are the damn odds? Mm-hmm. And on the day, I don't want to give it away. On the day itself,
I don't want to give it away, and then you keep.
It's just incredible. All right. So my point is, we really put these presidents on a pedestal that don't deserve to be there, while we have presidents who are flatly ignored, or smeared. And I think I'm going to save it until, no, I'll just probably roll along. Before we go on to bash Woodrow Wilson, because I know I made a lot of claims before, and I'm sure some people are like, that's crazy. It's not. I'm going to play a video. It is from, about this person, about maybe, if you see it, subscribe to it. It's good. It's from the documentary, The Birth of a Nation. This is one of our little factoids. The first movie ever to be played in the White House was played by Woodrow Wilson. It's a 1950 screenwrite, Birth of Nation, which was originally titled, because it was a book first, The Klansman. And it basically features the Klan as the heroes thwarting psychopathic rapists, black African Americans, who are like terrorizing society, and white women, and Woodrow. This is Woodrow Wilson in all his glory. A lot of people try to dismiss this, but this is why I want to play this video. A lot of people tried to dismiss this truth, all right, because he's one of the first Democrats, first progressives, right? And he is their first president. Teddy is Republican. Teddy Roosevelt was the real deal. He wasn't a progressive. He was a populist. These revisionist historians tried to push him in with the old progressive movement, where it's just not the case. The same thing with William Jennings Bryan. He was at his heart a populist. Progressives were something very different. But because of the popularity of the policies under populist candidates and figures, revisionists who were leftists basically tried to gobble them up into the movement, when they very much agreed on nothing, or very little, and they would not have called themselves allies. So, to those who want to dismiss Birth of Nation, I'd like to play about 2 minutes from a documentary where you will see exactly how much success Woodrow Wilson, who rode in the presidency as somebody, he was a Northerner, New Jersey's president, right? We're going to talk about somebody else who came from New Jersey after that, and he was before Woodrow Wilson. But we're going to go out of order here just because we started to talk about this. This was a systemic, like that word?
Yeah.
A systemic problem with the Wilson administration, where he came in as the educated Northerner, the first smart president he wanted to be, known as, Mr. PhD, Mr. Thinker, who promised people who were for integration and civil rights that he was going to be a president, a pro-civil rights president. But that didn't happen. And it's going to help bust open this idea that we went from a civil war to Jim Crow. As if there wasn't 60 years in between. Where Woodrow Wilson's party did everything in their power to prevent a post-Civil War America that was more integrated, that was more accepted. That is the true history. But we don't ever talk about those decades because that would just do so much damage to the modern narrative. All right, let's pop up this video. I'm going to play 2 minutes of it, and you can see the struggles that people had with Woodrow Wilson when he pretended he was going to be a man for civil rights. All right. So audio should be linked up. Here we go. Trotter was an activist, a civil rights activist. 5 Democrat Southerners. Democrat, Dixiecrat, early Dixiecrats. They're not Dixiecrats yet, but liar.
No sound, baby.
How could there be no sound? Everybody says there's no sound, or just some people?
Everybody's saying no sound.
No audio? You kidding me? Hold on. Time out. Let's do it again. Make sure we share it with audio.
I don't think you hit the.
What do you mean? It's there. Entire screen. Share tab audio. Let's try this again. Let's back up and try this again.
Is the audio on there?
I wonder if I put it
On
in exit. It is on the video. I can hear it clear as day. Let's do it double again. Tell me if you can hear audio or not. All right. It's there. You can see. See? It's clicked. Do nothing different. All right. We'll try it again. If not, I'll just tell you what it says. But the documentary is so much better. How about now? No? No?
Nothing. They're saying.
I don't know why it's clicked with the audio tab. Unless, no, that's not it. Unless I got to remove us. All right, so basically, I'll tell you what it says. All right? If you can't hear, I hear it perfectly. I don't know why they can't. Must be weird. Must be something. I clicked the little box, says audio. So he basically got the endorsement from The Guardian, big, integration movement. The paper, it's not the same Guardian that you know today. All right, what happens the minute Wilson gets in office? He appoints 5 Southern Democrats to deal with this. And what they do, they basically segregated bureaucracy, okay? And that had not been the case. I want to stress this. Federal clerks, everybody works side by side. Color had nothing to do with it because, as I have said multiple times, Jim Crow did not just come out of thin air. Jim Crow was repeated attempts to basically punish the South. So it led to what are called redeemer governments and politicians in federal office that were allied with these redeemer governments. Why did they call themselves that? Because they were going to redeem the South. They were treated as second-class citizens in the Union. They never really did get accepted back in the fold like Lincoln wanted to do. Lincoln wanted to forgive and move on. He did not want harsh feelings. But of course, Lincoln was assassinated. And several presidents, a drunkard who had corruption issues, Ulysses S. Grant, great general, but a drunk, and he was corrupt. Johnson, right? They all basically folded under the pressure from people during Reconstruction who wanted to punish the South. And that continued for years, decades. Eventually, after, and some people know this from reading our Virtuous Republic, the Grand Army of the Republic was the last final straw, making Southerners pay veteran benefits for Union soldiers, but not for Confederate soldiers, for disabilities and for service. And that was the final straw that broke the camel's back. And redeemer governments ran all over the South for statewide offices saying, we're going to declare our power, we're going to reclaim our power, and we're going to reclaim our status as first-class citizens. We're all right. And this continued. Jim Crow was later instituted by those people as they gained popularity. People like Wilson claimed that they were going to put a stop to it. When he got into office, he did the exact opposite. The exact opposite. And I wanted you to hear that because you would have heard from writings of the time that when these integration, I don't even know if that's the right way to put it. When these civil rights activists who helped Wilson get elected, went back for a second time and said, under our first meeting, you gave us the impression you didn't know what was going on and that you were going to reverse these policies. Wilson basically told him, get out of my office, boy.
Mm-hmm.
This was a racist man. But here's why it matters. He was very emblematic of a modern Democrat progressive. This concept, like he was from New Jersey. This concept like something changed or something. Nixon did it. Yeah, Nixon did it. Nixon came after Johnson. You relied on Republicans in the Senate to pass the Civil Rights Act. Johnson fought his own party. Johnson made a racial slur after it was passed.
Yep.
Which we're not going to repeat. This is ridiculous. The Southern strategy was a political strategy. It wasn't a cultural change and shift. Whether they were from New Jersey or South Carolina, they were always the ones who fought civil rights. And Al Gore's daddy held the record for the longest filibuster trying to thwart that bill. For crying out loud. How many times have we had Don on talking about Robert KKK Byrd? Bill Clinton. Well, he had everybody had to be part of the Klan. Didn't mean he had a major role. Nobody has been attributed with more recruits in the 20th century to the Klan than Robert KKK Byrd. That was his job. He was like the Anwar al-Awlaki. He was what al-Awlaki was to Al-Qaeda. That was what he was to the Klan. He populated their ranks all throughout the 20th century.
He was a recruiter.
That is his job. That's what he did. I mean, this is just crazy.
Well,
Yeah, no Joe Rogan controversy there. Because why? He's got a D after his last name. It's all right. It's all right that all of these people absolutely harbored the same views that Hitler would later push in the Third Reich. Euthanasia. Genetic supremacy. Planned Parenthood was founded to murder black children. They're not a women's health group.
They even sterilized them.
They were intentionally trying to reduce the population of black America. What the hell are you talking about?
They were evil.
They were believers in euthanasia? This is nuts. By the way, Hollywood celebrities, Democrats, progressives, before everybody realized what Hitler was doing over there, it was, we got to go to Germany to see firsthand what they're doing. This was something they believed in. Only when we saw the horrors of it did everybody run for the hills. Mm-hmm. When it came to associating with these ideologies and these worldviews. And since I can't play the video, that really stinks, because I wanted to talk about, it's 12:58. When we come back, we're going to talk about a president that's little known, hardly cited at all for his feats. But since this is inside the numbers, there's several things that made him the first to do this, the first to do that. Don't you give it away.
Okay. Am I right, though? I was right.
And he was a key figure because you want to talk about a real change, a real realignment. He was truly the last of his kind in his party. Mm-hmm. Post him, this figure, the Democratic Party went off the rails. Full bore statist policies, full bore these beliefs that we've been discussing. And the point is, nobody wants to. It's a good thing that it's a good thing for certain people, certain political parties. It's a good thing nobody wants to talk about him anymore. Because he's relevant for two reasons: because of the conversation we're having, and because of the parallel that it draws to something that is going on now. Mm-hmm. Because we've gone all of these years without this man being the only one to do it. And it is very possible that title will have to be shared with somebody else, which would be an incredible feat because, again, there's only one guy to ever do this. Yeah. There's a reason. It's hard. It's hard. And it also requires the times to be ripe for it. otherwise you're just another president, right? And it is what. But I'm already speaking too much here. Yeah. I'm about to go to a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. All right. Plague, as always, thank the Bone Band for the theme song. Bad habit. I don't do that enough. But before we go, all right, whether you're watching on Getter, you're watching on YouTube, you're watching wherever, roll on over to Rumble. Do us a favor, sign up. And while you're there and you're on Rumble, go ahead and give us those rumbles. All right. But up in the corner right there, see the Locals button? Go ahead and subscribe to the Locals community, peoplespundit.locals.com. Join the revolution in data journalism. Get, all the exclusive content we do, voter file and analytics, which we haven't done in a while. We got to get you one. Waiting on this one state. But you know what? Maybe it's probably because it's inference. I didn't do Minnesota, but I probably should have just anyway. But I was waiting on this. North Carolina and Ohio, who have both been rejected, waiting for them to clear up before we could do those. But there are others that we can do. And a lot of people had asked about Maryland and Delaware. So we're going to go ahead and roll those out this week too, even though I'm traveling. I'll just have to do it while I'm on the road. But yeah, you get exclusive content such as that, early access to polling results, embargoed polling results, which you guys see I keep doing. You know the drill, though. Don't be sharing. Don't be sharing. Embargoed means embargoed. And just share with each other.
Y'all also
you come together, right?
And make these questions.
And right. So it really helps me because only supporters can do it. Members can, check out what we're doing, but only supporters can have input on it. The more, the better, because it really helps me gauge what people want to ask about. And of course, we can't get to everybody's desire, but we try to pick the ones we hear the most voices. Right. That's why if you're contributing to the Public Polling Project, we appreciate all the compliments in the comments you guys leave, but feel free to leave a request. Yes. This is what I want. All right. Because we're not seeing enough of that, despite us telling everybody all the time to do so. We love the compliments.
But we want to know
if there's something you want to hear about, let your voice be heard. You want us to poll, let your voice be heard. Because the more those same topics get references, the more likely they are to end up being the topic of that survey. Right. So, so there's that. All right. But of course, I'm going to play this. We'll be back in 2 minutes, 30 seconds, talk more about a very underrated president and someone who has a lot of firsts under his belt. All right, it's a President's Day special. Hang tight. Inside the Numbers.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night, just to give in to the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a
All right, we're back to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Locals. Speaking of which, signing up for locals. I will get you the Hillsdale speech later this week as soon as they send me the file. All right, so I'll pop it up there. Gonna make it more story. I don't want people to be like, I don't want to do what I do to you guys on the show sometimes, but just drown everybody in numbers. That's just not how the speech is going to go this time. All right, so yeah, I think you'll like it. I think it'll be I think it'll be entertaining. All right. And I'll get it to you as soon as I can. But definitely, like I said, you're watching on Rumble, which I see a lot of people are migrating. That's great. But of course, if you're still on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But on Rumble, sign up to the Locals channel. Like I said before, we are absolutely going to be able to deliver election coverage based on local membership. All right. So we're definitely imploring people to do that. It should be great. You know, I mean, I am going to change some stuff up this year. It'll be cool, but I feel like I feel like if we get to where I want to go, then I can deliver some of the stuff that I've always wanted to deliver and just didn't. And some of you guys did get back to me on dev, you know, people who have skills and talents like that. I did get back to a few of you. So more, you know, the more the merrier. I don't know, you know, eventually we're going to end up with here. But, you know, people wanted API docs and stuff like that to check out. We definitely got them now. So if I got back to you, get back to me. I can send that over to you. Check it out. You can tell us what you think. All right. With that in mind, though, definitely join the revolution at peoplespundit.locals.com. The revolution. All right. Back to our thing. Congratulations, Vince. You absolutely got it correct. It is Grover Cleveland. A very underestimated, undercited, and underappreciated president who basically saved the nation at a time of great challenge. All right. Economic, I would say, challenge. Also, corruption. It is a man. He is a man, was a man, who first was, you know, I mean, he was the governor of New York, born in New Jersey, elected in the state of New York, mayor before that. Even through all of these machine-like systems, this man was on the straight and narrow. He is the first president to enter the White House as a bachelor and get married at the White House. The only president to get married at the White House. The only one to serve non-consecutive terms, which I think is very notable right now, because it doesn't just take a president running again who may have lost re-election. He lost his re-election. The times must be ripe for it. With Grover Cleveland, there's a lot of parallels to the former president, Donald Trump. One is he was elected by the people to clean up and shake things up. It was still, I would say, it's fair to say, the Gilded Era. And people felt like there was an elitist force ruling the country. Stop doing that, young lady. Ruling the country. My little daughter's watching from the sidelines. And they felt like those people were really interfering, you know, with the everyday man, and that they were hindered, or, you know, things were rigged against them. Very similar. A lot of parallels to Donald Trump's election. He came in, he caused a ruckus, he caused a problem, and the system wanted him gone at all cost. Really, it came down to like the straw that broke the camel's back with him. The system said, that's it, this man has got to go, was deploy for free silver. All right. It was essentially a pyramid-like scheme that he was opposed to. He was a Bourbon Democrat, the last of his kind. What is a Bourbon Democrat? At this point, there were a lot of these new kind of Democrats that were very elitist and very, that's it. I mean, that's it. They called themselves progressives. They claimed they were fighting for one man, one vote kind of issues, you know, even though that was not, you know, no longer really their sole party platform. They were founded based on, you know, that vision by Jackson, right? So that's not what they were at this point. And what emerged from that was Bourbon Democrats, and they were free market, laissez-faire Democrats. He was the last of his kind. But he believed in sound monetary policy, and he didn't want free silver. Long story short, they booed him out after his first term. all of the elitists get what they want, and the economy collapses. Who gets hurt the most? Those little guys they promised they were champions of. Sound familiar? So 4 years later, they're begging for this guy to come back. His stature rose considerably after year one of his opponent's presidency. And whether Cleveland would come back was a question central on everybody's mind for 3 years. Until he finally announced that, yes, in fact, he was going to run again. He had the I told you so campaign. Right?
Yeah, the epic.
I told you so. I'm the only one who will clean it up. I'm the only one with a history of doing what I say I will do. I'm the only one with a history of not being influenced by these special interests. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do what they told me to do. And I'm going to take a ball. I'm going to wreck the whole damn thing. And he did. But it was a massive depression by the time he got there. A recession, let's just call it. Massive recession. And he had to clean up everybody's messes. A lot of parallels to Donald Trump. If he runs again, which of course we are all seeing and waiting to see what he will do. There were those who were on Grover Cleveland's side who believed the parallels are really uncanny. There were many in Grover Cleveland's own party who believed, Cleveland had his chance and he lost. So, we could run on the same platform with somebody else. Well, the rest is history, and he didn't. He was the only Democrat as a Bourbon Democrat because he wasn't what the rest of his party had been becoming, which was what's incredible about this. The only Democrat to be elected between 1860 and 1912 because he ran as something his party was not. This is what our party was supposed to be, remember? In truth, Bourbon Democrats have more in common with modern Republicans than they do with Democrats, that they went extinct after Grover Cleveland. And after Grover Cleveland came who? Woodrow Wilson. That was the next Democrat to be elected. And it was a very different kind of Democrat, as we just went over. Grover Cleveland did not believe in Anglo-American supremacy. Grover Cleveland did not believe that certain members of our society are smarter than others based on where they were born and the station they were basically gifted into. Grover Cleveland did not believe that we should basically care more for one group of people than another. He believed that if everybody worked hard and were honest, that not only could they get there, but they should. That opportunity should exist because there shouldn't be unfair hands in the marketplace, creating competitive advantages. And he was around in the early period that would lead up to the push for the 17th and 16th Amendment. And then in that early period, there were attempts by Congress to essentially use their power to regulate to create these unfair advantages. And he opposed them vehemently. He saw the danger of giving these people too much power. He hated special interests. And for that, they hated him right back. Mm-hmm. But he was, nowadays, if you live in the tri-state area, you may see the Grover Cleveland rest area, right? Mm-hmm. That's about all that he's got to him, this guy. Yet, if you live in New Jersey, you hear all about Woodrow Wilson. His house is basically a museum. And Cleveland's is too, by the way. There's one for Cleveland. But just, it doesn't get the attention. It doesn't mean it's not, and it's not because it's not on the Jersey Shore. It doesn't get the attention because he is not viewed like Woodrow Wilson is viewed. And that is not correct. He was, in fact, a great president and an honest man, unlike Woodrow Wilson, who was not by any measure a great president. And in fact, left the presidency a miserable SOB who really hated that he supported going into the war. Don't let some of these historians dupe you. But what he hated about it is that he found out what many other presidents find out. You get entangled in a foreign conflict and your domestic agenda goes out the window. He had massive reforms planned. He wanted to implement this supremacy worldview domestically. Mm-hmm. So in some strange way, World War I was like a gift to the American people that he didn't get that. It came later. FDR later picked that mantle right up and carried it, or rolled with it. Excuse me. Wink. that was a low blow. That was a little low. But, it would have happened even sooner. He is the president who presided over the ratification of those amendments, basically, and their implementation, which have led to the worst concentration of power in any single area of the country in the history of our nation. Prior to that movement and his presidency, most wealth was distributed all across the Midwest. There was wealth, of course, in the Northeast. You've always had Wall Street and financial centers. There was still some wealth in the South, although they had been economically hurt. And there was wealth out west. But the Midwest was where it was at. From Ohio to Michigan to Pennsylvania. And it wasn't concentrated in one area or one state. You had Carnegie. You had Rockefeller. Mm-hmm. You had these titans of American industry. They certainly didn't converge on one area. They literally created what is now known as the modern middle class. That was a concept. Opportunity in the American economy created what many people thought could just be, a theory. Mm-hmm. There was no concentration of wealth and power. There just was not. And after those two amendments in his presidency, that all started to change. The capital got much more powerful. Wealth was concentrated around it and culminated at the end of the 20th century into 7 out of 10 of the most wealthy counties being in and around the capital. The only one out west is because of defense contracts in Colorado. The communities that cater to those contracts. And the average tenure, like we've spoken about before, for not only the U.S. Senate, it started with the U.S. Senate because of the 17th Amendment, but then, that culture carried on to the lower house. But tenures exploded in both chambers, led by the Senate. Before this man and this movement, that was not like that. So I don't know if that's something we should be praising. Is it? Is it? The very people who lament the wealth gap in this country praise the people who created it. That's just truth. Mm-hmm. And they still do it to this very day. But a lot of firsts, like I said. For those who didn't hear, Grover Cleveland was the first president, only president, to be married at the White House because he was elected as a single man. He served 2 non-consecutive terms. He's the only one to be counted twice because of that re-election, 26th and 24th president. 22nd and 24th, right? Mm. Yes, I believe, 22nd, 24th. And the only Democrat elected between 1860 and 1912. Pretty remarkable. And the parallels to now in this current time, because Joe Biden is making many of the same mistakes that his successor is making. Mm-hmm. Promised the world, delivered a disaster. I mean, that's where we're at. And time will tell whether or not we'll have 2 presidents who are counted twice. But I strongly suspect if that's true, just because of age, we'd be looking at the same kind of situation where Cleveland's successor tries to take over, because it's just the way it is. I think Cleveland died in 1900. Had a heart attack, massive heart attack, I believe. Can you get that for me? Can you look at that? I think he died in, when did Grover Cleveland die? You got me? Yeah, can you check that out? I believe it was a massive heart attack or something like that. But he was older when he was, especially since, life expectancy was not what it is now, ladies and gentlemen. By his second term, things are different. Presidency itself takes an enormous toll on people. I think Donald Trump's the first person who I didn't see get eaten up by the presidency. Mm-hmm. George W. Bush entered the presidency as a very young guy. Though. Donald Trump came out looking fantastic. Maybe a little heavier, but fantastic. Maybe not even. No, maybe not.
He lost weight. He looks better.
Barack Obama went in there looking like a young whippersnapper. Came out looking like a gray old man. Bill Clinton was basically, looks like he had a run-in with a succubus.
Lord,
I couldn't help myself. I know, and I debated that in my head, and I just let it go. The presidency is like the hardest job in the world, folks. And not all presidents serve equally. Bill Clinton didn't start work until like 10:30 in the morning. Barack Obama was a late starter.
He had a heart attack.
He had a heart attack, right? Massive heart attack. Was it 1900?
Oh, you want the date?
Yeah. What's it? What year? Just what year?
1908.
Hey, I was going to say 07.
71.
I was going to say 07. All right, that's 71. Yeah. Wow, that's a long life though for back then. That's a long life.
That's a long life.
Especially a man of his weight. He had a weight issue.
A big weight.
He had a big weight issue, but he was an honest SOB. Mm-hmm. And think about it too. First mayor of that miserable city, then governor of that miserable state. No offense, I'm born in that state. That's my native state, so I can mock it all I want. All right, but it's true. Baby. It is true, and especially back then when you're talking about the height of the machine. Tammany Power. You're talking about the height of it, and the rest of and yet he was elected itself was a feat. But if you look back at some of what he did when he was mayor, fighting the crooked stuff with the fire department and the police and the vetoes, cutting. He just was like, I'm not going to budge. Mm-hmm. This is a special interest. We don't need this. This is that. That was the man he was. It was really something.
That's how he rolled.
You would be hard pressed to find other men in his likeness in any period. It's just really incredible. Past like 1812. Really something else. Because the truth is, we did start to lose our way a lot earlier, than we think. A lot of people think most of our problems come from the 20th century. I think the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s definitely did really did.
The 60s and 70s.
60s and 70s, yeah, because, it led to divorce rates. And look, it is what it is. Numbers are numbers. Divorce is not good. And that is the future of the country. Children are the future of our country. So we damaged the future of the country by having this very, liberal. I'm not using it in the term that most people, think. Lacks liberal moral standards. And it's not conducive to a strong family unit. And the strong family unit is the building block of a strong society. Strong communities are the building blocks of a strong state or municipality even. Strong municipalities or townships or whatever you call them are the building blocks of a strong state. And strong states are the foundation of a strong union. That you take you chop family right out from underneath that, it all goes downhill. Takes a village, my butt. It takes two parents.
Yes.
That's what it takes.
Now, all good parents create a great community.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's impossible for a single parent to do it. That's not, look, like I say a million times, I generalize because I look at math. I look at statistics. So yes, I generalize.
Now, are there single
public policy is
great? Yes.
Public policy, however, is about generalizations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are single mothers who do great, but is there anyone who would argue that one single mother would could do a better job without an equally strong husband to help.
To then thrive instead of,
especially as parents now, there are periods in both our children's lives, both boys and girls, where we see the father and the mother playing dominant roles in these periods of their development. And they needed both to get through those periods. So it's not a dig on anyone. I'm simply saying that it's much more favorable system. And by the way, I'm sure there are single parents who do better jobs than two negligent parents or parents that are not doing great. But nobody could sit here and argue that the post-60 divorce rate is a good thing.
Well, divorce is sad, and it
damages the mental health of the child.
It hurts the child because here the child thinks that they have both, and now it's broken, and then also the child feels, coming from a divorced household, is it my fault? Did I do it? What caused mommy and daddy not to be together? It's just a whole hot mess. So, of course there are going to be issues that follow divorce.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to show something, actually, if that's cool with everybody. I don't know that I'll be able to
But the sanctity of marriage is no longer valued like it used to be as well.
The divorce rates, because people are like, how do you know it's because of this? Well, I mean, it's simple. Very simple. And let me see. I don't even have to zoom in. Look at the divorce rates. This is from the monthly vital statistics report. It did end, of course, by 2000, but you can clearly see right there. That is an old one, though. We could probably update that puppy, but very clearly. And it has kind of like stayed relatively, it continues to tick up. It does. I'm trying to find one from that vital statistics report. There's the Ministry for Kids right there. It shows, that's a damning graph. That's a really damning graph. Oh my goodness. You know what? I'm going to show this one to them too. This one's even more updated, and it's an incredible. Why, by the way, would this organization be showing this? Why would they be? Because it's very clear. Yeah, let's pop this up. Here's more common. Goes into 12. So you do see a tick up, the general, that we have periods, we have years where it falls marginally a little bit, but even still, generally, since the 90s, it plateaued, I would say, with like slight increases. No bueno. What can I say? No bueno. But there it is. In the 1960s and the 1970s, we saw just a dramatic increase in the rate of divorce, which you can overlap with the poverty rate, by the way, and you can actually overlap. Great work by Dan Mitchell at the Cato Institute. You could overlap it with, and I think he was citing somebody else, actually, what I read him do, but you can overlap it with, despite increased spending for public education during this very same period, everything from literacy and graduation, you can overlap it with the divorce, and it still hasn't affected or helped anything. And then also the poverty rate. Johnson goes out and creates, that crashed. Johnson goes out and declares a war on poverty, right? Great Society reform, speaking of presidents, another one of the worst presidents in history. He was, and he won in a landslide, but there's a reason why he didn't run again, because he was going to get slaughtered. He didn't want to embarrass himself, so he decided not to run again. Basically, Johnson comes out, changes the biggest social changes to the relationship between the individual and the state since the New Deal. And it's an abject failure by all measures. Particularly hurts the black community the worst. The black family survived the Civil War. They survived pre-Civil War slavery. They survived the Civil War. And by the way, so did labor participation rates post-Civil War. They survived Reconstruction. They survived Jim Crow. They survived the Roaring 20s. But they couldn't survive President Johnson's New Deal.
Yeah.
Doesn't that at all send off alarm bells in people's heads? Well, both the participation rate collapsed, divorce rates skyrocketed and poverty rates skyrocketed. Because what the Great Society reforms did was incentivize Black women to raise children without their man. And it did not work. Thoughts on Tulsi Gabbard speaking at CPAC? Yeah, I'm going to answer a few questions before I do honestly have to cut it a little short. But I'm gonna we're gonna try to do. Look, when we're traveling, we're gonna do a lot of things with locals, like kind of. We'll buzz in and out with you guys, like, hey, here we are here. Hey, here we are doing this. Hey, so we're gonna try to make it.
Using my phone recording him.
We're gonna try to give you guys a little extra stuff this week because for those who don't know, the only reason why I'll travel now is for speeches that I give. At this point, I hate traveling.
He's a home man. He likes his house.
I have traveled a long time. I have been, I have been a vagabond, a soldier. I'm done. I'm now a man with his casa.
And his roots.
And my roots. And, I'll travel to go give a speech. I'll try to do something like that.
Which is like 2 day tops.
2 days.
Then he's like home.
And wait, I'm in and I'm out. Watch, I'm going in on Wednesday. Getting there the afternoon of the governor of Florida speech. Can't wait for that.
I look forward to that. Then have dinner with him.
See you soon, Ronnie.
We're going to see you, DeSantis.
And then Thursday is not even a dinner because then it's dinner.
It's breakfast and brunch.
Dinner lunch. And DeSantis' speech. Then the next day it's like lunch and my speech. And then we catch our flight. Come back. So that's it. Soon, one day, I'll be flying myself back and forth. Soon, one day. Baby. Yep, one day, guys. That's the dream. That's the dream. So by the way, if people can't stand me and they're a critic of me, you can blame the U.S. federal government for creating me. Because when I got out of the Army, they were like, what do you want to do? I said, I just want to go to Embry-Riddle, use my math brain, and get an aeronautic engineering degree. And, I wanted to go back to school, and I wanted to study a lot of things, and I haven't been able to in my life. But I was like, I want to be probably an aeronautics engineer and, get my pilot's license. And basically, Laura and I just want to, like, island hop, And they were like, being a pilot or an aeronautical engineer is not a viable career. I'm like, it's my money. What the hell do you care? It's my money. Because it was. But they were like, if you want to convert this to this, you're gonna have to pick from this list. They made me pick statistics and political science. And you're like, we need more good people on this. And I always love politics. So don't get me wrong. It wasn't a hard sell. It's just I would have had a much more private life. They created me. They did this.
It's all your fault.
Yeah, you could have just left me with my little option strategies and my plane. That'd have been fine, man. That'd have been fun. But you know what? I never would have been able to keep my mouth shut.
No, you wouldn't.
That's just, I've never been able to. Politics has always driven me. And I don't know what I would have. I don't know. I would have been the guy you hired with the little plane to write like your campaign slogan in the sky or something.
You read it.
Masking children is child abuse.
That was epic.
So-called so-and-so 2022. Well, like that would have been me. All right. So let's answer some questions. What do I think about Tulsi speaking at CPAC? Here's my deal. Tulsi understands the MIT, the deep state. She's got all that. I don't know if what we're seeing is a transformation here, like a legitimate conversion, or if we're seeing something that's trying to split the right. I think that there is room for someone like a Tulsi on the right. However, if you fundamentally understand the dangers, and again, going back to what we're talking about the founders today and the presidents today on President's Day, if you have that instinct, that Jeffersonian instinct to the nature of man and the nature of government, why do you only apply it to the military-industrial complex and the intelligence services? So, for instance, we all want to be generous, but, and I know nowhere in the Bible does Christ actually say, teach a man to fish, don't feed. But it is general principle of what he's trying to say. they believe that they would have found the Great Society reforms to be evil, and in fact did call schemes like that evil. People use language like that all the way in the late 1800s, when there was, because getting old age insurance under the Social Security Act, basically still was viewed to be evil, to pay people to do nothing. They invented the concept of retirement. Early Americans didn't do that. And, they didn't need old age insurance because their parents looked after. Their children looked after their parents. It just was very, very different. Different society back then. So I think that Tulsi would have to start, to be serious, I'm saying, she would have to start applying those worldviews that she clearly understands when it comes to certain areas of government. She just doesn't apply them all equally. So why don't you view a government bureaucrat in control of your healthcare, whether you get a procedure or not? Why don't you see the danger of death panels if you see the danger of the military-industrial complex? The nature of man is so. That's the way it is. You're a bureaucrat, you get cold, you get crass, you get inhumane. Right? You're looking at somebody as just a data point, not as someone's father, mother, grandfather, brother, sister, cousin, uncle, whatever, aunt, boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, husband, wife. I don't understand how she can continue to argue for some of these big government policies and not realize it's dangerous to give the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, access to certain health insurance. Certain health records. I'm sorry, there's nothing limited government about that. So I think it's interesting, and conservatives would probably open their arms to, look, I had witnessed one of the most intriguing conversations at CPAC, which, by the way, folks, you go there once, twice, you've been there enough. One of the most intriguing conversations I've ever seen at CPAC was with Van Jones, who absolutely was terrified that Donald Trump was going to double the vote, the female vote share among black women, because he, in the end, delivered on criminal justice reform. And he was there to talk about how, the Democrats were not seeing this danger. And in the end, that happened. But he wasn't there to be like a friend, He was there for his own pet peeve, his own pet issue. But he wasn't there to be an ally. So a lot of things Tulsi says, I 100% agree with. She's spot on. And she's the one who murdered Kamala Harris's presidential campaign.
Yes, she did.
The comment about Joe, who is a segregationist, by the way. Joe Biden was a segregationist. He was. I did a whole episode on this already. I don't have to go back. It's not hard to find. Went back and found NBC articles, not exactly right-wing, ABC. Joe Biden was a segregationist, ladies and gentlemen. On schooling, absolutely. Segregated schools, he's the guy was like a champion.
But I don't.
The ACLU, the long-time counsel for the ACLU, or the NAACP, loathed Joe Biden. He basically said he threw bricks through the windows of integrated schools. He did that. That's what the political equivalent of what he did. So the policies that he supported. But the comment that Kamala Harris made on the stage about Joe Biden when it came to busing did not deliver well with Democratic voters. We polled it. We know. It was bad. They thought it was a cheap shot. And that was her first real wound. And then when Tulsi just murdered her on criminal justice reform, it was over.
Yep.
2-3 days, low single digits. Remember that? Because a lot of people just didn't realize. Kamala Harris has put more black and brown people behind bars than anybody. To go out there and pretend like you're like pro BLM now, a little late for that, lady. This is the woman, by the way, she's just an abuser of power. Don't take it personally. David Delano is white as white can be. He is being prosecuted. He is being prosecuted now because of Kamala Harris. Because Kamala Harris picked up the phone, Planned Parenthood was on the other end when he busted them selling baby body parts illegally. And they said, do something about this. So she called up her Gestapo buddies and they kicked his door in. And he's still living with this prosecution to this very day. But she started it. So, to minorities out there, don't take it personally. She's just an abuser of power and always has been. That's who she is. By the way, the idiot just told a crowd, I don't know, you guys see this? That Europe's been at peace for 70 years. Russia's like threatening the peace. It's been at peace for 70 years. She says it in Munich. This is a very ignorant woman.
She took special to a whole new level.
Laura, you couldn't have picked a worse place to say it.
Say that. Yeah, that's like the worst.
It's unbelievable. Honestly, it's unbelievable. Just like Joe Biden. Oh, well, the Second Amendment was never absolute. If you don't know what the hell you're talking about, then just shut down. It was absolutely absolute. The Second Amendment was absolutely absolute. Private citizens owned cannons. They made jokes speaking about Alexander Hamilton the tyrant. They made jokes about cannons at Monticello and just in case Hamilton ever decided to take that standing army of his and try to take over the federal government. And there were people in the South who had cannons that they would make warships with. Private warships.
No joke.
It's crazy. I mean, these people just don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Well, that's why it's so chaotic now, because they don't even know the true history and they pretend they do. And then they teach this to other people. And then therefore you make the same mistakes over and over and over again.
And I just want to say, because some of these old flapping lips said Tulsi is just the cringe jaw of the demo, or the Dan cringe jaw of the demo rat party. Both are junior members of Klaus Schwab's economic forum in good standing. Yeah. And by the way, I saw that and I just wanted to say this media push to call that comment or that claim that the World Economic Forum has infiltrated Trudeau's government. Their effort to call that misinformation is in and of itself misinformation. So Schwab absolutely said that he was very proud of Justin Trudeau, that they are all very proud of Justin Trudeau, and that more than he said at least, if I remember correctly, he said at least half of his cabinet are our guys. Mm-hmm. And that his goal, the goal, period, has been, Argentina was another one where he declared victory, has been to infiltrate the governments of these nations. And he held up Trudeau and Argentina as great examples of doing that. The media has been running all over the place saying that's a misinformation. And then you add somebody actually posed the question to an MP, a member of parliament. He pretended the audio and the video was distorted, even though it was clear as day. Everybody heard every symbol, a syllable, every syllable in that question. It was crystal clear. And this MP attempted to pretend like, and this MP, I meant to say a dirty word, pretended to, that he could not hear the question and then moved on, sandbagged and moved on. It was absolutely outrageous. And then another MP jumps in and says, this is an attempt to put disinformation in our debate. Mm-hmm. It's not disinformation. Schwab said it with his own big mouth. Clear as day. And it sounds crazy because it's like the Dr. Evil conspiracy theory, but I hate to tell you, that is the world we live in. Mm-hmm. Now, do I go off the rails with some of these people? No. But when it's true, it's true. And in fact, I find it really naive to believe that there wouldn't be some kind of conspiracy theory by these powerful men and women. Like, you would be an idiot not to think that people who wield that much power are not going to exert it.
And want more.
Undermined our own systems of government, undermining democracy, undermining republicanism. Of course they will. Because they are exactly the type of people, the artificial aristocracy, who's just looming beneath the surface all the time. So again, why I love Jefferson, because Jefferson, I mean, that would be obvious to him that there would be a cabal that would be doing this. I mean, absolutely obvious. You'd have to be stupid not to think there wasn't. And that you constantly have to guard and protect about. Never can you get complacent. Never. It's always there. They're always there. They're always a threat. They may be weaker at some times than in other times, but they are there, and they are always a clear and present danger to liberty. Always. Always. Never going to change.
Always willing to strike.
Always and forever, man. Always and forever. It will never change. Always right. Like Laura just said, always willing to strike when the time is right.
Like a rattlesnake.
And they always use fear to do it. Like, I feel very bad for the Canadian people right now. We had Viva on last Wednesday to talk about it. But for Americans out there talking about Canada has fallen, and wait, because if we do our own trucker thing, they're good. Now they have a playbook, and they'll use it. Folks, Trudeau got the playbook from us. We are not in any better position. No. He's using the January 6th playbook. He just kind of morphed it for the event.
Now is the Biden administration.
Joe Biden's been looking at your damn finances for a year. Have you made a transaction more than $500 lately? Well, guess what? They looked at it. This is why fascism snowballs so quickly. Because for a long time, the right was inaccurately attributing these moves to the left to socialists and communists. Obama's a Marxist. He's a communist. He's a socialist. No, this has always been fascism. If they seize the energy sector, then it's communist. If they use the power of the federal government to coerce these private industries or co-opt them in any way, shape, or form, that's fascism. The only reason communists and fascists hate each other in the 20th century is because they each believe they had the superior form of socialism. They are nevertheless, socialism is a very general blanket term to use to call these people. It did not invoke fear in the minds of Americans. It didn't educate them at all. Communist is a very overused term. Fascism, however, invokes fear. And this truly is fascism. And by the way, now that we have these very clear examples of fascism, the most persuasive argument to that Antifa was funded by Democrats and the left is that they are nowhere to be seen right now. The so-called anti-fascist group is quiet in the face of fascism. That group was always a fraud. Yeah. It was a fraud in Europe. It was a fraud when it made its way to America and in modern times. The truth is they have never really been anti-fascist. Communists and anarchists funded the original anti-fascist movement. And it wasn't because they disagreed with statism. It's because they thought communism was better. And that's all this was now. If you understand history, you'll be able to spot this a mile away because they use the same tools over and over and over. They just re-gift. You know, it's like regifting. It's the same damn garbage present.
You've been saying this from the start.
They just put different wrapping paper on it each year.
New bow.
And a new bow or something. Get a look at the shiny wrapping paper. Don't worry that it's the same crappy toaster that doesn't work. Right? That's where we're at. In everything, right. Been. I mean, Tom, that's perfect. Everything is the opposite of its name. Or Pete said that, sorry. Everything is the opposite of its name. That's absolutely true. And that's absolutely intentional.
And I've been saying this too.
And anything that is, by the way, I mean, they didn't come up with this out of thin air. Anything that is anti-nationalism, you know, any ideology like that, it's all, this is well thought up. Tom Narn lamented the failures of leftism in the 20th century. Said the ideology is not as strong as nationalism. So until we get rid of nationalism, we're never going to be able to win this.
And that's
and now all of a sudden nationalism is a bad word.
Mm-hmm. It's taboo.
But that was what they're, he was the heir apparent to the Marxist school of thinking. And even the fascists caught on to that and said, yeah, you know what? It is. Because if you look back, the Japanese didn't lend assist when they needed to, when the Italians needed them. The Italians didn't lend assistance when the Germans needed them. And in fact, it was really the Japanese didn't lend assistance to help the Germans help Italy, when Mussolini was clearly the weak link. Why? Nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Why were there so many holdouts in France? They had Nazi sympathizers, but what was it that kept even French members of the parliament who were socialists? Why didn't they come on board? Because they considered themselves Frenchmen before socialists.
Yes.
And while I agree with many aspects to fascism, I'm a Frenchman first. Ken Waltz, Man, the State, War. Fantastic. 3 images. Learn your 3 images. Telling you. It's heavy, but he's brilliant. And it's great.
Somebody wants to know, are we going to get out of this, Rich?
I don't know yet.
But there's always hope.
But I'll tell you this, I'll never stop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going down, swing.
Fighting.
Hey, look, I'm a believer. I know how this story eventually ends. I just don't want it to end like that during my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to be the one who lets it end like that. It's just not me. I got kids. You guys have children? You want them to live in a fascist America?
That's heartbreaking.
An America where they're not even able to critically think, let alone if they were able to speak it out loud?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them living in a world like I didn't bring them into this world so they could live like that.
We critically think in this house all the time.
That
They'll be outcasts.
You ask my children right now what God's the greatest gift God ever gave us. Outside of life,
Mm-hmm.
they'll tell you reason. They all know it. A 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. They've known it for years. Reason. Why did he give us reason? So we can know our maker. So we can think for ourselves. So we can live as he wants us to live.
Free will.
No, I mean, there's no way I'm going to be part of that end. And I really don't know how. See, in my lifetime, I lived in a bridging of 2 times. So it gives me a unique perspective. But this wasn't always a party thing. Like, whether or not some of these party members were like good liars, I wrestle with a lot. Like, did they ever really believe the stuff they said? I think a lot of them no. The answer is no. They've always been liars. Like, look at Jimmy Carter. He ran as a nice moderate from Georgia. The guy is a radical SOB right now. Was he ever the moderate that was elected in 1976? Probably not. I think he's always been a weak radical, but a radical nonetheless.
The integrity is lacking.
So I mean, but we all still had agreement in certain principles, and the fact is, it does a disservice to President's Day if we don't acknowledge that one side no longer believes in those principles. In fact, hates them.
Mm-hmm.
Believes that the world would be a better place without them. And that ignorance is a danger to us all. It puts all of us, our children, our grandchildren, puts them in grave danger. Look at history. Historically, once these fascist movements get going, man, they snowball. They snowball and you can't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
America is a nation, like I said, now we're becoming an I can't nation. We were an I can nation, can do nation.
Yeah.
And if anyone can stop that sudden march to like fascist rule, it's going to be us. Do I have hope for Canada? No, I don't. Australia? No. We're going to be an island. Like, what's his name? Duke on Twitter. He's absolutely right. By the way, if you don't read his blog, I don't agree with everything he says. Big DeSantis fan, by the way, but he loves history. And I love much of the same topics he does. You know, the battle of Gilgamesh or something, you know, whatever it may be. He talks about all these topics. I love it. And he was just saying that there are some pockets of hope within America. You know, you have these red state pockets. I think even if we were able, eventually we'll be like this little island in a sea of stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we can branch back out and start to push out, you know, start to get some divide here. But I think that I want to see that question. As Breitbart said, but I think eventually there's more harm that has to be done. Yeah, thank you, because it was rolling up on me. I lost it. Politics is downstream. This seems axiomatic, but culture is downstream from media, Hollywood, legacy news, social. It's funny you say that, dude, because I think the same way. Like, it was a great saying, but it was a little bit simplistic for all of it. Like, where does it start, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are compromised. The state has supplanted the cycle. It's now upstream. I think about this a lot, actually, because it's not organic, is what you're saying anymore, right? It's not organic. I tend to agree with that. Like, yes, they're downstream from culture, but there's somebody else upstream, right? Mm-hmm. It's no longer an organic thing. Like Stephen Miller tweeted yesterday, I believe it was, by all measures, Western civilization is exhausted and on the downward turn. Whether it's crime, poverty, what our elites are doing to us, right? Their own interests are sabotaging Western civilization and those who have lived in the modern liberal nation state, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he put it really well, which is that here, you know what? I'm going to pull it up. This will be, and then after this, we'll cut it and we'll go. But
right,
yeah, you can go. You can get ready. Where is it?
Love you guys and have a
happy Laura's
Monday,
gotta go.
by the way.
You know, generally speaking, damn, I lost it anyway. Happy President's Day, she said. Basically, in a nutshell, what he was saying is, at that kind of like that pattern doesn't hold anymore. And I mean Jason Miller by Donald Trump's old advisor, White House advisor, Jason Miller. And that, these can't really hold because everything's like broken. All of those institutions and organizations are broken. And without the media playing the role they traditionally would play, and they're just in on it, there's almost no way to reverse it without a complete and total collapse, because they want to replace it with something else. So they're no longer allowing this to develop, like society to develop organically. They want to break something to replace it with something else, which is Karl Marx 101, by the way. So it's like they haven't abandoned each. It's definitely more fascist in nature, but they haven't abandoned other people's ideas if they think they're effective, critical ideas. So you have to just keep your eyes open from the left to right. But I do think there's a way out of it. I do. I think the idea of America itself, as President's Day, I'll end like this. The concept that a nation like America was even able to be formed out of our what is a rather dark history of human civilization is an incredible miracle. So, I mean, just if that can happen, then just about anything else can happen. We are down in a new world. There's nowhere that those thinkers among us can go anymore, where we can practice the old virtues, as Duke said, but it doesn't mean it can't be changed and turned around here. Nothing lasts forever. And sometimes you have to build it back out of rubble. So their idea is not going to work. If history tells us anything, it's a failed system. It is not going to work. It never will.
And to think that they can do it.
It's so arrogant, Laura.
Arrogant.
Yeah, hubris even.
Hubris, yes.
Hubris, like they're special or something. They're smarter than everyone else who's come before them and failed. It's absolutely it's hubris. Aristotle would say, right? This smells like hubris. I can't take it. You're making my stomach hurt. That's what it is. All right, don't forget, like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, that's great. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, hit the notification bell so you know when we're going to go live, but definitely join on Rumble. All right, we can see a lot of people coming over, but asking and pressing everybody to do so. When you're there, join the peoplespundit.locals.com community. That will, like I said, dictate how many people sign up will dictate the type of coverage and how sophisticated it will be come the November elections, and hopefully even before that. So we don't want to just wait until November that night like we did last time. We would very much like to cover primaries and everything, but it takes work, takes a lot of money, it'll take a big community. So we got a lot of high hopes for 2022. All right. And I haven't put up, somebody said, where's the new donation form? I haven't put it up yet. I promise I'll get there. I'll get there very, very, very soon. All right. And then I'll let you know. But it's always the same URL. If you see it still says winter 2022, then just wait. You know, you could give there because it was underfunded. I guess you could, but you know, and then I'll just push it on over like I have done before. But if you want to wait, then just wait. I'll get there. All right. All right. What else? Am I missing something? No, that's it. I hope everybody has a happy President's Day. A very good one. Enjoys themselves if they got the day off. Take it easy. Rest, relax, rejuvenate. You know, make yourself all the more. Never rest on this, though. What we talked about today. Never rest on these challenges. You know, and they don't. And never be complacent. All right. With that, I'm out. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you on Wednesday with something. All right, like I said, on locals, you're going to see us kind of traveling around, but there won't be a show. That's today. This is the show. All right, and then Friday, we'll be back. We're running on Friday. I'll be back late Thursday night, but I fully intend to do the show on Friday. All right, and I don't know what's going to go on with Don if he can't make it because of CPAC. We'll just host our Q&A a little longer. All right, that's the plan. But we'll be back late Thursday night, and man, I'm a worker. You know, so I totally intend to do it Friday. So we'll see you with another Inside the Numbers on Friday on locals. We'll see you on the road. All right. All right. All the best, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a night. Just to give into the need and leave it all behind.
'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow